They used to call us dirt-born, not as an insult, but as fact. In the grand sprawl of the galaxy, tens of thousands of systems stitched together by warp lanes and trade alliances, Earth was a speck. A crusty blue rock on the fringe of a dead zone, uncolonized, unimportant, unscanned for decades because, well, why bother? We weren't part of their great councils. We didn't trade in their glowing markets. No one invited Earth to the stars, and no one expected us to come unannounced. I still remember the first contact. I was stationed in what used to be Nevada, now just called Sector 9. The atmosphere was bone dry, the sky burned red from years of solar flare damage, and the only thing that worked on schedule was misery. The Earth governments had collapsed after the water wars. Cities turned into ruins. Power belonged to regional warlords who made peace with bullets and fueled their rule with scraps. We were recovering, yeah. But slowly, cautiously. Then they came. The Avalari, gleaming ships, smooth and silver like moving marble, hovering above the stratosphere, their voices echoing across the skies, not through sound, but directly into our heads. No one asked if they were gods. We knew they weren't. They were too polished, too clinical. Gods don't come in suits and smiles. They didn't ask for permission. They scanned our world, labeled us low-tier sentients, and dropped their flags like we were some unclaimed territory. That was their first mistake. At first, people bowed, not because we respected them, but because we were broken, tired, hungry. When someone arrives from the heavens with food, medicine, and promises, you listen. When they tell you your children will be trained and educated in interstellar systems, you believe them. We did. For 6 months. That's when the disappearances started. They called it selective integration. They said they were taking the brightest among us to help bridge the gap between our world and theirs. We never saw those kids again. My brother's daughter was one of them. Sweet little Lena. Gone. No trace, no answer. We began to dig. Hackers in the East cracked part of their communication systems. What they found didn't surprise us. It shattered what little innocence Earth had left. We weren't being uplifted. We were being studied, broken down, harvested. Genetic compatibility, labor thresholds, obedience metrics. It was a damn checklist for resource extraction, and we were the product. Their second mistake? They thought we wouldn't fight back. But Earth is funny that way. You beat a man down long enough, and sure, he'll kneel. He'll even smile. But the minute you turn your back, he'll stab you with a screwdriver and walk barefoot through fire to watch you bleed. It started with one base, a remote Avalari outpost in the Arctic, hidden inside a repurposed glacier. No real guards, just scientists. We raided it, took their gear, killed every last one of them, sent a message. The response was predictable. A battlecruiser descended over the eastern wastes and turned 3 settlements into ash within 2 minutes. They called it corrective demonstration. We called it the day Earth stopped pretending to be civilized. What they didn't expect, couldn't possibly understand, was how quickly humans adapt to pain, how we evolve in chaos. Within weeks, old-world engineers reverse-engineered enough of their tech to power up the dead cities. Within 2 months, we hijacked one of their signal towers and fed them false data, hiding our troop movements, sabotaging their surveillance. By the 3rd month, every warlord on the planet agreed to one thing. Earth comes first. They thought they were taming a planet. Instead, they handed weapons to devils. I remember the last thing my father told me before I left for the resistance offensive. They thought we were savages, he said, gripping my shoulder. Let's show them what savages do. We didn't have much in the beginning. Just rage, rusted guns, and stolen tech we barely understood. But we had something the Avalari lacked. Desperation. The kind of desperation that made a man put explosives in his chest and walk calmly into a patrol convoy, the kind that drove mothers to smuggle weapons under their babies' cribs, knowing they'd be executed if caught. The first coordinated strike was called Operation Black Lung. Fitting name. It took place in the smog-choked ruins of what used to be old-world Istanbul. The Avalari had converted the Grand Bazaar into a processing hub, a glorified meat grinder for abducted humans. We knew they were experimenting. The word spread that the Avalari were splicing DNA, testing compatibility for hybrid soldiers. We didn't understand their science. We didn't need to. We just knew it had to stop. I was part of Strike Team Sigma. 6 of us. No one had real names anymore, just call signs. Easier that way. You don't cry for Ghost if he doesn't come back. You just reload and keep moving. Our insertion point was through the collapsed metro tunnels. The Avalari never figured out our underground systems. Too primitive, they said. They didn't bother scanning ruins. They saw no threat in debris. That was their third mistake. The tunnels were tight, pitch black, dripping with moisture and rot. Every few meters we had to slow down for the scouts to check for structural instability or Avalari detection spores. One of their little tricks. They'd release microscopic drones that could cling to skin or clothing, then broadcast your location once you surfaced. We learned to burn our clothes after every mission. When we breached the hub, we hit hard. No fancy tactics, no precision, just chaos, explosives in the ventilation shafts, EMP pulses to disrupt their drones. Fire and bullets and screams. I remember the first Avalari I killed face to face. Tall, glowing eyes, skin like blue porcelain. He looked surprised, like it hadn't occurred to him that a human could shoot back. I didn't hesitate. I unloaded my entire mag into his chest and watched him fall like a sack of wet glass. No honor, no last words, just silence. It was satisfying. We liberated over 200 prisoners that day. Most were barely alive, starved, tortured, drugged out of their minds. Some had no skin left on their arms. Some had no tongues. One girl couldn't speak but wrote, "Thank you," on the wall in blood. That was the moment I realized we weren't fighting for territory. We were fighting for our species. But success comes with a price. 2 days later, they retaliated. Not with soldiers, with something worse, orbital fire. 3 tungsten rods, each the size of a school bus, dropped from orbit at near-light speeds. No warning, no sirens, just 3 flashes of light. And the entire southeastern region of what used to be Iran ceased to exist. The Avalari didn't issue a statement. They didn't gloat. They didn't need to. It was a message. We heard it loud and clear. They could wipe us out. Anytime. Any place. So why didn't they? That question haunted us. Theories flew across resistance channels. Some said we were a test, an experiment to see how long a feral species could resist before breaking. Others believed we were being used to train their soldiers, to simulate real war conditions. A few thought they were afraid. Me? I think they didn't want to win too quickly. They wanted submission. They wanted Earth to kneel, beg, and offer itself up like all the other worlds they'd conquered. They wanted to break our spirit before they broke our bones. That was their 4th mistake. Because humans don't break. We splinter, we fracture, but every shard becomes a weapon. After the orbital strike, the resistance fractured into dozens of autonomous cells. No central command, no hierarchy, just fire and fury on every continent. Sabotage teams derailed their supply lines. Suicide bombers hit their skiffs during takeoff. Hackers looped their surveillance footage, making ghosts out of real people. They called us vermin. We called ourselves survivors. But then came the Leviathan. Avalari Command deployed it 6 months after Black Lung, a Planet Cracker-class dreadnought hovering in geostationary orbit, its belly filled with war machines. terraforming drones, and something new. Colors. Colors weren't soldiers. They were exterminators. Programmed AI units, 7 feet tall, razor thin, with synthetic muscles and eyes that tracked heat signatures through walls. No emotion, no hesitation, no mercy. The first color incursion wiped out 3 resistance hubs in under 48 hours. We found the remains days later, burned corpses stacked in neat piles, each tagged with coordinates. The message was simple. We see you. We're coming. That was the turning point. We knew now that guerrilla tactics wouldn't be enough. We had to go bigger. So we did. It started in the ruins of São Paulo. A rogue scientist named Dr. Tarnak, no one knew if that was his real name, developed something from a stolen Avalari neural processor. He called it Ghost Code. It could infiltrate Avalari command links and overwrite fleet positioning data. The only catch? It had to be uploaded directly into a ship's core. Not just any ship, a fleet relay vessel. There was one stationed above the Andes, shielded, guarded, untouchable, unless you were suicidal. I volunteered. I'm not brave. I just had nothing left to lose. My family died in the orbital strike. My unit had been wiped out by colors. I was tired. But I wasn't done. Getting to the relay ship was the easy part. A smuggler crew got me close, slipping past the patrol nets during a solar flare. The hard part was getting inside. I had to crawl through the exhaust maintenance ducts, 12 kilometers of boiling metal, just to reach the access port. I lost 2 fingers to heat burns, almost passed out twice, but I made it. When I plugged in the ghost code, nothing happened. For a second, I thought I'd failed. Then the lights dimmed. The deck started to tremble, and the stars outside, they shifted. Ghost code didn't just overwrite fleet coordinates, it made them forget Earth existed. Every patrol ship, every scout drone, every orbital monitor, they were all rerouted as if Earth was a blank spot in the galaxy. It bought us 3 weeks. 3 weeks to breathe, to regroup, to rebuild. In those 3 weeks, Earth changed. Factories hidden beneath mountains came alive. Engineers reverse-engineered Avalari weapons into something raw and brutal. Railguns mounted on repurposed oil rigs, plasma cannons hidden inside skyscrapers, EMP mines buried in salt flats. And then came the Hammer, our first space-capable dreadnought, built in silence, fueled by rage. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't pretty, but it could tear through Avalari cruisers like wet paper. We were no longer resisting. We were preparing. Because Earth wasn't just surviving anymore. We were coming for them. And this time, the galaxy would remember who we were. It didn't last, of course. We knew Ghost Code was a patch job at best. The Avalari weren't stupid, just arrogant. That's what made it work for as long as it did. But even their pride had limits. And when their navigational fleet started reporting phantom errors, routes leading to dead zones, fleets circling nothing, it didn't take long for them to start connecting dots. 21 days after Ghost Code deployment, the blackout ended. They found us, and they were pissed. You'd think they'd just nuke the planet and be done with it. But no, they didn't want quick, they wanted loud. They wanted to make an example out of Earth, show every other feral species what happens when dirt-born insects bite the hand that feeds. They sent down judicators, not foot soldiers, not drones. These were high-born, ceremonial killers, 8-limbed freaks wrapped in black armor and draped in flowing robes made from living fabric. They didn't speak. They just judged. And if you failed that judgment, if your species wasn't deemed corrective capable, they erased you. It started in what used to be Ukraine, an underground resistance node we'd codenamed Wasp Nest. They walked in at dawn, unannounced, slicing through 3 concrete meters of defense like it was butter. Cameras picked up flashes, Red eyes, curved blades, and then silence. All 87 fighters inside were dead within minutes. No survivors, no body parts, just ash. The message was clear. Ghost Code bought us time, but now we were out of it. Except Earth wasn't the same anymore. We'd changed. Hardened. If they expected us to crawl again, they were 2 wars too late. We triggered the grid. While the Avalari celebrated their little victory, we lit up 12 coordinated weapon platforms hidden across Earth's orbit. Scrap satellites, asteroid mining rigs, even old space station husks, all rigged with hacked plasma emitters and scavenged rail cannons. The Judicator assault cruiser never saw it coming. 1 second, it was hovering in low orbit, scanning regions for the next strike. The next second, the sky lit up like the 4th of July. A single rail spike, 100 kilos of steel-core tungsten, accelerated to Mach 25, hit the cruiser's side and split it open like a beer can. We watched it burn for hours. A black cloud smeared across the morning sky. No escape pods, no counterattack, just silence. They weren't invincible anymore. You could feel it, a shift, not just in the resistance, but in the people. That old hopelessness, the dead eyes, the quiet mourning in every voice. Gone. Replaced with something sharper, something feral. We'd drawn blood. Now we wanted more. For the first time, we went on the offensive. Our next move was bold, maybe suicidal, but desperate times demand insane men. We targeted a relay hub on Keplerian 4, a staging ground for the Avalari's colonization fleets. It wasn't even in our system. We had no warp gates, no slip drives. Just one ship, the Hammer, held together with duct tape, grit, and vengeance. Command gave the go order. The crew volunteered. Every one of them knew it was a one-way trip. I was one of them. We called ourselves the Last Sons. Not because we thought we were heroes, no, because none of us expected to come back. The Hammer's slip drive wasn't designed for humans. We weren't meant to ride a wave of unstable wormhole energy in a ship stitched together from alien trash and Earth metal. Most of us blacked out. Some puked blood. One guy went blind. But we made it. Keplerian 4 hung beneath us like a jewel. Green fields, massive energy farms, and 10 orbital platforms teeming with supply ships. They didn't know we were coming. We dropped like a spear through atmosphere, all guns hot. The Hammer didn't have stealth. It didn't have elegance, but it had pain. And we made damn sure they felt every ounce of it. The first 2 platforms disintegrated before they could mount a defense. Their automated turrets weren't calibrated for our angle of attack. We rammed the 3rd one, straight through the command bridge. It screamed as metal tore and oxygen vented into space. Then the real fight started. Dozens of interceptor craft launched. Sleek. Fast. Designed for dogfights against equally advanced ships. We weren't advanced. We were angry. We overloaded our own shielding to supercharge the cannons. One by one, we picked them off, sacrificing hull for kill shots. When the main weapon array overheated, we jettisoned half the forward deck and turned the remains into a battering ram. By the time the orbital stations fell, we were a wreck. Fires everywhere, half the crew dead, but we were alive. We sent the message. Earth wasn't hiding anymore. We were taking the fight to their doorstep. The galaxy paid attention. Other conquered species, ones we'd never heard of, started sending encrypted transmissions. Short, desperate, but filled with hope. You're not alone. We're watching. Keep fighting. The Avalari tried to censor it, but they couldn't contain it. The myth of Earth, the forgotten world, the dirty, savage, primitive backwater had become something new, the planet that fought back. But myths only go so far. The Avalari unleashed their final card, the Shard Mind. a hive intelligence built from the neural tissue of hundreds of assimilated species. It controlled fleets, dictated military tactics, and processed 1 billion decisions per second. With it, they no longer relied on organic command. The shard mind was their command. It made no mistakes. It left no weaknesses. It targeted Earth with surgical precision, orbital strikes, EMP waves, communications scramblers. Food depots were vaporized. Underground tunnels collapsed. Entire resistance cities, cities we'd rebuilt, were turned to glass. But here's the thing about humans. You can beat us, burn us, erase everything we've built. But you can't erase the hate we carry. You can't wipe out the memory of stolen children, butchered families, and glassed homelands. We kept fighting. We built decoy cities, ghost towns filled with radiation dummies and heat signatures. The shard mind wasted millions of megatons destroying empty shells. We hijacked Avalari broadcasts and replaced them with images of their own corpses. We captured a live judicator, strapped explosives to its chest, and airdropped the body into one of their sanctuaries. Cruel? Maybe. But Mercy died a long time ago. And then, it happened. We cracked the shard mind. It wasn't on purpose. One of our hacker cells, kids mostly, barely out of their teens, were trying to intercept fleet patterns and stumbled across a back door. A maintenance protocol buried in Avalari war code. Something left behind by the original creators. Something the shard mind couldn't block. It allowed us to insert a single command. Just one. We didn't use it right away. Command debated for days. Should we cripple their fleet? Send them false orders? Trigger a civil war? In the end, we chose something simpler. We made it remember. We fed it the faces of every dead human, every orphan, every burned city, every shredded resistance fighter. And then we forced it to calculate the number of lives it would need to erase to kill Earth. The number broke it. It froze mid-command. Entire fleets stopped moving. Some fired on each other, others just drifted. The Avalari screamed over their networks, trying to reassert control. It was beautiful. And in that moment, that brief, burning second of confusion, the Hammer 2 rose from Earth's shadow. This time we weren't going alone. 15 dreadnoughts, hundreds of assault crafts, troop carriers made from rebuilt orbital junk, Earth's first fleet. We didn't announce ourselves. We didn't offer peace. We just launched. And this time, the galaxy didn't laugh. It watched. It remembered. Earth, the forgotten world, the dirt-born backwater, had become something new, a storm, and it was heading straight for the heart of the Empire. We didn't know what to expect when we reached the Avalari homeworld. Their data archives were fragmented. Most of what we had was old recon, partial schematics, hearsay from other enslaved species. Their worlds were legend, polished civilizations of glass and gold, clean skies, floating cities, untouchable. Turns out the legends were true. We emerged from the wormfold to see Avalar Prime suspended like a jewel in the black, massive blue-white, wrapped in orbiting rings of tech, satellites, and weapon platforms. Cities stretched across the hemispheres like veins of light. Oceans the size of continents shimmered beneath artificial moons. For a moment, we stared. Quiet. No one said it, but we all felt it. This was what they fought to protect. Not just territory. Luxury. Comfort. Control. They stole children, bombed towns, glassed continents for this. It made what we had to do next easier. We didn't waste time with announcements or declarations of war. We weren't here to make a point. We were here to break them. The first wave hit their outer satellites. Coordinated EMP bursts, followed by kinetic rail spikes and crude but effective Earthborn code injections. Their defense grid flickered like a dying star. Seconds later, the orbital platforms lit up in flames. Some spun out of control, crashing into one another like drunk titans. We sent in our boarding crews next. The Avalari fought hard, sleek warcraft launching in coordinated formations, Judicator-class elites sweeping in with grace and speed. But we were no longer the scattered, starving rebels of Earth. These were battle-forged men, born in rubble, raised in gunfire, and trained by the harshest teacher known to man, loss. And unlike them, we didn't care about retreat. We didn't care about survivors. We only cared about ending it. I led the breach into Orbit Station Helion, a massive energy node that powered half their inner ring network. It was guarded by 30 Avalari elites and automated turrets synced to visual threat recognition. But they hadn't updated their threat profile for humans. They didn't expect us to use meat shields, dead drones strapped to magnetic hull boards to mask our thermal signatures. They didn't expect us to weaponize blackout spores, a tech stolen from a fungal species they'd enslaved centuries ago, and they didn't expect me to walk through fire, blood-soaked and half-limping, dragging a flamethrower made from a broken fuel cell, screaming like a mad dog. We took that station in under 7 minutes. They didn't just lose power, they lost control. The main fleet punched through their orbital guard lines hours later. Their defense commander tried to open diplomatic channels. Said something about negotiated surrender and human integration into the wider galactic family. We cut the transmission before he finished the first sentence. No one was interested in joining their family. Not after what they did. So we did to their homeworld what they'd done to ours. We called it Echo Drop. 10,000 tungsten rods, wrapped in depleted uranium, dropped from low orbit. Each one aimed at a capital district, military base, or energy core. They didn't just explode. They erased. White light, then nothing. Towers crumbled, seas boiled, skies turned red. One by one, their proud cities went silent. They screamed, and we listened. They begged, and we ignored them, but not everyone died. No, some we spared, not out of mercy, but so they could see. We dropped live feeds from Earth's ruined cities onto their central network, burned out schools, glassed highways, rows of children's shoes found in Avalari research labs, every atrocity. And then we showed them who was doing it back to them, us, the Dirtborn. They retaliated. Of course they did. Massive countermeasures flared up across their final continent. Planetary defense grids activated. Their sky cracked with blue lightning. Giant walkers, four-legged behemoths with plasma cannons, stormed from hidden bunkers. But we had learned, and we had changed. Our mechs weren't clean or precise. They were ugly, welded together from broken ships, scavenged Avalari alloys, and Earth steel. But they moved like devils, roaring across landscapes, wielding magnetic blade arms and flamers that scorched entire platoons. I watched one of our old-world tank divisions, the Dogs of War, charge head-first into a walker squad. They didn't break formation, didn't even slow down, just overloaded their engines and rammed straight into the walkers' legs. They died. But they brought every last one of those machines down with them. This is how Earth fights, not for strategy. Not for politics. We fight for the dead. It took 5 days to seize full control of Avalar Prime. 5 days of fire, ash, and blood. 5 days of non-stop screaming, some theirs, some ours. And then we found it. The core citadel. Hidden deep beneath their capital, sealed behind layers of defense, sat the heart of the Avalari Empire. It wasn't a war room. It wasn't a treasury. It was a nursery. Rows of genetically grown children, artificially enhanced embryos, thousands of them, engineered, programmed, bred for intelligence, obedience, superiority, a perfect race made in test tubes. The Avalari weren't born anymore. They were manufactured. All this time they hadn't been a species. They were a product. The Empire wasn't a people. It was a machine. Every culture they absorbed, every planet they subjugated, every civilization they erased, was just fuel to keep the machine running. And Earth? We'd been the first cog that refused to spin. When we realized this, everything changed. We sealed the Citadel. We didn't destroy it. No. We left it there, untouched. A monument. A reminder. We broadcast its coordinates to every enslaved species in the galaxy, sent the footage, the labs, the truth. And then we issued one message. They wanted to judge us. They called us Dirtborn. Now they will crawl in the dirt with us. The galaxy belongs to the broken, and Earth remembers. They say the transmission was intercepted in every quadrant. That hundreds of worlds erupted into rebellion overnight, that statues of Avalari lords were pulled down by alien hands, that cities burned, armies turned on their masters. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. All I know is what we did, and what we became. The war isn't over. It never really ends. But the Avalari, they're done. Their homeworld burns behind us. Their fleets float dead in orbit. Their golden towers collapse into the dirt they once spat on. Earth rose from the ashes. Not as a victim, not even as a victor, but as a warning to every race watching from the shadows, to every empire dreaming of conquest. Don't mistake silence for submission. Don't mistake patience for weakness. Because when you push a species far enough, when you break its bones, scorch its skin, steal its young, you don't kill it, you forge it. And when it comes back, it won't come back to talk. It'll come back like Earth did, with fire, with fury, and with a memory that never forgets. They didn't cheer when we won. Not really. Oh, sure. The conquered species lit up their skies, toppled their masters, tore down centuries-old banners and burned the bones of old kings. We saw the feeds, uprisings, revolutions, a dozen empires cracked in two, and the symbol at the center of every one of them, the Earth flag, that blood-red X on a black field. No stars, no borders. Just a reminder. We don't forget. They wore it on their bodies, painted it on buildings, called it the mark of rebirth. But make no mistake, they weren't worshiping us. They were using us. We'd done what they couldn't. We'd bled the unbleedable, burned the unburnable, destroyed the myth of the Avalari. And when the ashes cooled, every scared little species in the galaxy looked at us and saw a new shield, or a new weapon. The old power was dead, and humanity had replaced it. We didn't want to rule. That's the funny part. We weren't interested in building an empire, or setting up capital worlds, or writing some universal constitution. Earth had no politicians left, no kings, no diplomats. What we had were soldiers, and soldiers don't make good rulers. So when the offers came, fleets arriving, cloaked ambassadors requesting peace talks, alliances, cooperative trade, we sent a message back. Earth doesn't kneel, Earth doesn't rule, Earth remembers. We thought that was enough. It wasn't. Because power, whether you want it or not, draws enemies. The first came wearing smiles. The Thalrock Consortium, a cluster of aquatic species once enslaved by the Avalari, proposed a diplomatic network. The Remnant Accord, they called it, a peace coalition. Member worlds would share resources, defend each other, prevent another tyranny from rising. Sounds noble, right? We declined. Their faces dropped. Not in disappointment, in calculation. They weren't looking for peace. They were looking for a leash, and when we refused, they changed tactics. That's when the propaganda began. They didn't attack us with weapons. They attacked us with words. Earth's violence was justified, but excessive. The destruction of Avalar Prime was a war crime. Humanity's refusal to participate in diplomatic reconstruction is destabilizing the galaxy. Are we safe with them still armed? Funny how fast they went from cheering our victory to whispering about our threat. We found ourselves caught in a storm of public denouncements, economic sanctions, trade boycotts. The galaxy we'd freed suddenly saw us as dangerous. And maybe we were. We'd built the most efficient death machines in modern history. We'd trained soldiers with kill counts in the thousands. We'd proven that we could erase a homeworld if pushed. And worst of all, we didn't ask anyone's permission. That scared them more than anything. But fear turns quickly into schemes. One of our forward bases on the moon of Braca went dark. We sent a scout team. What we found wasn't just wreckage, it was a message, carved into the walls in Avalari script. Monsters make monsters. The corpses were mutilated, no tech stolen, no survivors, just butchery. The Avalari were supposed to be broken, beaten, but something had survived, something angry, something evolving. Back on Earth, our orbital monitors picked up anomalies, cloaked movements near the edge of Sul, disturbances in the radiation belt. Too organized to be natural. We tracked one of them. A ship, but not just any ship. A human ship, or something like one. Warp signature resembled ours. Hull plating was Avalari, but the energy core bore Terran design. It had no markings, no crew registry. It didn't respond to hails. When we finally brought it down with a kinetic net, we cracked the cockpit. No pilot, just bone. Stripped, polished, carved with coordinates in an unknown language. We followed them. What we found changed everything. A hidden system, no name. No natural warp gates, buried behind gravimetric anomalies that scrambled most scanners. Inside, a fleet, not Avalari, not human, something in between. Ships with organic hulls, pulsing like muscle tissue. Structures that breathed, weapons that hummed in frequencies that made our teeth bleed. And in the center, a station, not a command center, a lab. Inside were hybrids. Some were human, some were worse. Eyes where mouths should be, limbs fused with machinery. Minds linked by neurocords that pulsed like arteries. They didn't speak. They screamed, constantly, even in sleep. We found logs, video files, horrific, detailed. This wasn't some rogue Avalari faction. It was built by the Accord, the same peace coalition that had demanded Earth disarm. They were creating their own army, not just to protect themselves, to replace us. The theory was simple. The humans were useful, but uncontrollable. Let's make something better. So they took our DNA. Our war strategies, our history. They fused it with Avalari genetics, control implants, chemical obedience sequences. They tried to create the perfect soldier. They failed. The hybrids had rebelled weeks before we found them. Killed their handlers. Hijacked ships. Were spreading quietly in the cracks between systems. The galaxy didn't just fear us. It was preparing to end us. And in doing so, it had unleashed something worse. We left the station intact. Didn't destroy it. We transmitted everything we found, unedited, across every comm channel, every black market stream, every hidden network. Let them see the truth. Let them see what their peacekeepers had done. The result? Silence. The Accord denied everything, called it a hoax, a fabrication. Some species believed them, others didn't. The galaxy began to fracture. Trade collapsed. Alliances split. Border skirmishes erupted between former allies. And in the middle of it all, us, Earth, still standing. Still armed, still hated. And now, watched. We didn't trust anyone, not after what we'd seen. So we closed our gates, recalled our fleets, built up defenses around Sol like we were the last fortress in a collapsing galaxy. Maybe we were. The hybrids didn't go away. They learned. They grew. Reports came in. Planets going dark. Not bombed. Not invaded, assimilated, no survivors, no signals, just echoes. The Accord begged us to help. Funny that. We told them we'd think about it. We won't. Let them choke. Let them learn what it feels like to be alone, outgunned, surrounded, and hunted, just like we were. The war isn't over. It's just changing. The battlefield is wider now, messier. The enemy wears 100 faces, some alien, some human. And Earth? We're watching. Not to conquer, not to liberate, but to remember. Because the galaxy taught us a lesson. Mercy is a lie. Peace is a leash. And unity is just control wearing a prettier face. So we don't unite. We don't bow, we prepare. Because one day the stars will burn again. And when they do, we'll be ready. Not to defend, not to survive, but to end it all. On our terms. We felt it before we saw it. The sky shifted. Not visibly, not something a camera could catch, but the air turned colder. Pressure dropped. Static hummed through every terminal. It was the silence before a world exhales its last breath. The hybrids had arrived. They didn't come in fleets. They came in hives, massive, bone-armored constructs that floated like tumors in orbit. Their hulls weren't built. They were grown, still twitching with nerve impulses and internal movement. We watched them drift over Triton, the outermost shield point of Sol's defense grid. And then the screaming started. We had no visuals inside the station, just audio. Men and women dying in ways that made no tactical sense. Throats opened, lungs collapsed, minds boiling over. It was as if they weren't just being killed, they were being rewritten mid-sentence. One scream lasted 20 minutes. We nuked the station, no hesitation, no votes, just silence, followed by flame. But we were too late. They were already inside the system. Earth hadn't seen war in over 3 years. Not real war. The kind that burns into your memory and scars your dreams. We'd been preparing, fortifying, building more walls than bridges. Paranoia had kept us alive. But paranoia wasn't enough anymore. They came in waves, not organized, not predictable. They moved like a virus, feeling their way through our defenses, striking where we were weakest, withdrawing just before they broke. We lost Luna Station 3 in the first week. Then the mining colonies in Mars's southern basin. Then Olympus Mons Forge, our only orbital weapon factory in the sector. Each time we sent squads, each time they vanished. Not killed, not captured, gone. We didn't find bodies. Just equipment. Armor scorched black from the inside, helmets fused to bone, weapons melted but untouched externally, like something had killed the man without firing a shot. Then we found the first one. It wasn't dead. It wasn't alive either. Its body was human, unmistakably so. But the face had been hollowed out. Skin stretched tight over a mesh of wet wires. Eyes replaced with clusters of black, insect-like pupils. Its mouth was open. Not in a scream, but in a grin. A wide, still grin. We dissected it. Inside we found traces of Avalari neural tech. Human muscle reinforced with carbon fiber tendons. Spinal cord replaced with a nutrient-fed biocore. But the brain wasn't there. Just a network, like a server node, a walking endpoint to something bigger. They weren't soldiers. They were terminals. The real hybrid was somewhere else, watching, learning, infecting, and we were running out of time. The Defense Council met in what was left of Old Seattle, now a bunker city buried 300 meters below sea level, powered by geothermal cores and wrapped in a shell of anti-orbital plating. I sat across from Commander Van, former resistance general. One of the few men I'd trust with a war. He hadn't aged. Not really. But his eyes looked 30 years older. The kind of tired you don't recover from. "We can't hold Sol," he said. No preamble, just the truth. I didn't respond. He looked at me like I was supposed to argue. "We can't hold it," he repeated, "but we also can't lose it. You understand the problem?" I nodded. "If Earth falls, the galaxy folds." Exactly. We didn't care about the Accord. Let them rot. Let them get swallowed in the dark corners they tried to forget about. But Earth? That was different. We weren't just a planet anymore. We were a myth. And if the last myth died, if humanity vanished into ash, the entire galaxy would follow. So we made a decision, one we swore we'd never make again. We went to them, not to beg, not to ask, to warn. We sent a fleet of 5, not dreadnoughts, just fast, hard-jumping cruisers with broadcast relays and old combat data records. We targeted 6 known Accord systems and dropped the message. The hybrids aren't coming. They're already here. You built them. Now you'll die with them, unless you stand with us. 3 systems fired on our messengers the moment we appeared. 2 jammed our signal and scrubbed all incoming comms. Only 1 responded. The Krith Dominion, a race of underground-dwelling insectoids who'd lost half their hatching worlds to the Accord's biotech purification programs. They didn't want peace. They wanted revenge. And they were smart enough to know that if Earth fell, they were next. The Second Pact was born in blood. No documents, no treaties, just a single broadcast agreement. No gods, no rulers, only the broken, only the mad. Only those with nothing left to lose. More followed. Outcasts, pirates, mutant sects that lived in irradiated debris fields. Old resistance groups thought long dead. Even a few rogue Avalari engineers, abandoned when their systems collapsed. We didn't unite. We didn't trust. We just pointed the guns in the same direction, and for the first time since the fall of Avalar Prime, Earth wasn't alone. The first real counterattack happened on the edge of the Vega corridor. A dead system. No resources, no civilization, just an old Accord relay station, dark, forgotten, abandoned for years. The hybrids were using it as a breeding ground. We didn't know what they were growing, only that it pulsed. The whole asteroid vibrated with low-frequency signals that caused migraines in anyone within 10 clicks. Scout drones overheated. Organic sensors bled out. So we bombed it, not with nukes, with solar cores, stolen from a collapsed dwarf star. The kind of payloads that don't just burn, they erase molecular structure. The asteroid didn't explode. It screamed. We don't know how. There was no atmosphere, no sound transmission, but every ship in the strike group reported it. A pulse, low and steady, like a heartbeat, then a shriek that made the metal groan. One ship turned on its own fleet and had to be destroyed, but the hive died. And with it, one of their nodes. We came back stronger after Vega. Tighter formations. Deeper scans. Kill-on-sight orders for anything hybrid. But it wasn't enough. They started copying us. Human fleets began encountering doppelgangers. Ships identical in structure, right down to serial numbers. Call signs copied. Even crew voices mimicked over open channels. At first we hesitated. And that hesitation killed us. That was their next evolution. Psychological warfare. We stopped hesitating after that. If a ship didn't confirm through triple-key encryption and DNA verification scans, we torched it. Better to lose a friend than let the hybrids through the gate. We had officially crossed into a war of attrition, and we were running out of soul to burn. Back on Earth, people stopped asking when peace would return. They stopped asking if the war would end. They started asking how it would end. And the answer was always the same. It won't. Not until one side is gone. Completely. Not until the sky is quiet. And even then, we'll keep watching. Because we know what happens when you forget. The galaxy forgot Earth once. It paid the price. Now it forgets the hybrids. And if they win, there won't be anyone left to remember anything. They named it Oblivion Protocol, but everyone called it the Reaper. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a fleet. It was something older, something buried beneath Earth before the water wars, before the old governments collapsed, before the Avalari even knew we existed. A weapon built when humanity was still playing with gods. No official records survived, just fragments. Notes half burnt, scrawled on analog paper. Diagrams etched in steel slabs stored in abandoned bunkers beneath the crust. What we pieced together painted a terrifying picture. A spatial anchor, a gravitational vector disruptor, a tear in the skin of the universe. It wasn't designed to kill people. It was designed to erase places. Not just destroy, unmake. Rip a hole into the vacuum between dimensions and let the laws of physics unravel everything in its reach. The old world feared it. That's why they buried it. But we weren't the old world anymore. We'd already seen what fear got us. Burned cities, dead children, and a galaxy that would have rather seen us extinct than free. So we didn't bury the Reaper again. We activated it. It took 3 weeks to stabilize the core. The power requirements were beyond anything even the new Earth could generate, so we gutted what remained of the lunar fusion rings, stripping their cores and feeding them directly into the chamber beneath Antarctica. We called it Deep Silence, the lowest, darkest place on Earth, a forgotten hole drilled to extract super-heavy elements during the climate collapse, now reborn as the heart of the Reaper. Only one person could fire it. Commander Van. Not because he was in charge. No one was in charge anymore. But because he'd been the one who found the Reaper's original fragments. Because he'd survived every war, watched comrades turn to ash, watched the Accord smile as Earth bled. And because he was already dying. Some infection from the hybrid scream bomb on Vega. Slow. Incurable. The doctors told him he had months, maybe, so he volunteered. I want the last thing I do to be a mistake someone else pays for. Those were his words. Typical Van. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. The Reaper needed a vector lock. A connection to the Hive's signal relay buried deep within their living constructs. We didn't know exactly where the hive mind was, but we knew where it spoke from. One central node, pulsing in and out of phase near the black breach, a collapsed system on the edge of known space. A graveyard. No stable warp points, gravity storms, fragmented time. But the hive was there, building something. Something big. So we sent in the last fleet, 17 ships, all unmanned, piloted by neural AI ghosts, their minds patterned after fallen soldiers. We didn't have the crew to spare anymore, just echoes of war, wired into steel and vengeance. Their mission? Punch a hole into the hive zone, drop a beacon, transcribe the vector, hold the line until the Reaper was fired. None of them were expected to return. They didn't, but they succeeded. We received the signal on day 4. Short, garbled, smeared with static, but the vector was clear. We now had coordinates that should not exist, a point in space simultaneously real and imaginary, wrapped in paradox, but our targeting software recognized it. The Reaper could lock on. We gathered what was left of command in the core room, a pressure-sealed vault beneath the planet's magnetic center. The walls hummed with energy. The activation console glowed like a dying sun. The debate started. What if this rips everything apart? What if we miss? What if this doesn't end them, just wakes them up? Van said nothing. He walked to the console, inserted the neural key, a spike of alloy laced with his own DNA, and turned to us. "No more talking," he said. "They started it. We end it." Then he sat down and connected his mind to the Reaper. We watched from orbit, all of us, survivors, veterans, engineers, broken people standing beside broken machines, staring at Earth as the ground around Antarctica split apart. A pillar of black light rose from the crust. Not flame, not energy, just absence. A wound in the fabric of the world, a vertical scar that hummed with silence too loud to bear. No sound came from it, but ships in orbit shook. Glass cracked. Ears bled. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Then the Reaper fired. Not with heat, not with light, with loss. A beam of anti-space ripped outward into the void, carving through nothing and leaving less than nothing behind. It traveled faster than physics allowed, not across space, through it, folding reality in on itself. At its end, somewhere near the black breach, the hive screamed. We felt it, all of us, across every system, across every ship. A mental wave that bent minds, cracked sanity, and echoed through dreams for days. They weren't just linked, they were one. And when we hit the core, it bled. The aftermath was strange. The hybrid fleets didn't explode. They didn't shut down. They just stopped, frozen, like statues suspended mid-motion. Some drifted into stars, some crashed into moons, some still float, perfectly still, eyes wide open, watching with no breath, no movement. Dead? Maybe. Dormant? More likely, the hive mind wasn't just killed. It was torn out of the fabric of existence, and without it, the body still twitches. We didn't celebrate. How could we? Commander Van's last signal came seconds after the firing. "Tell Earth." It remembered. Then static. No body. No remains. Just black ice over Antarctica where the Reaper once stood. Earth was quiet for the first time in years. Not peaceful, just quiet. Like a soldier after his last kill, staring at his own bloodied hands, wondering what's left to do. The galaxy tried to breathe again. The Accord reformed under a new name. They offered us a seat. We ignored them. Too many ghosts, too many liars, too much memory. The Krith retreated to their tunnels. The pirates scattered. The remnants of the resistance went back into the shadows. And Earth? We sealed the sky. The Reaper had left a scar in space above the South Pole, a slow-burning tear that doesn't heal. Satellites that drift too close vanish. We call it the Morning Rift. A reminder, a warning. Now I sit beneath a ruined sky, watching stars blink, listening to whispers. Some say the hive still lingers, not in fleets, not in ships, but in us, that we stared too long into the dark, that we brought something back. Maybe they're right. Sometimes I dream in their language. Sometimes I hear songs I never learned. But when I wake up, I still remember what Earth did, what Earth became. Not a hero, not a savior, just the last species that said, "Not today," and meant it. The first year after the Reaper was the hardest. Not because of more battles. There were none. No fleets, no screams, no hive, but because for the first time in a generation, the guns were silent, and we didn't know what to do. Earth had lived in fire for too long. Every system, every city, every soul had been geared toward survival. The factories ran night and day building war machines. The children learned tactics before they learned numbers. We buried our dead with rifles beside them, in case they had to fight again in another life. When the silence came, it wasn't peace. It was emptiness. The old cities tried to rebuild. New flags were flown. Council chambers were formed, hollow things, filled with warlords in civilian clothing pretending they knew how to govern something not on fire. But the people? They didn't cheer. They wandered. There were no parades, no celebrations, no speeches worth remembering, because Earth didn't win a war. We ended one, and there's no pride in extinction. The Reaper's wound still hangs over Antarctica. A scar in the sky, not visible to the eye, but felt in the bones. Electronics fail within 400 kilometers. No drones return. No satellites survive. Some call it the Morning Rift. Others call it the Warning. Pilgrims go there now, not with cameras, not with gear, barefoot, quiet, just to look into the cold and feel what it cost. Sometimes they don't come back. We stopped sending search parties, some things you choose to disappear into. I was assigned to the Reclamation Corps. Our job was to go to the outer colonies and survey what was left, not of the war, of us, human outposts, dead or dying, that had been cut off during the siege. Some of them had survived. Most hadn't. I remember one, Kellen's Drift, a mining colony that had built its own crude shields and somehow weathered 3 years without contact. When we landed, they stared at us like ghosts, not out of fear, out of guilt. They thought we were dead. They thought Earth had fallen. And in the silence, they'd done things to survive, things no one would speak of. We found bones in the water filters, weapons made from children's toys, a church built out of gun barrels. They weren't grateful we'd come back. They were angry, because we had. And that meant all their sacrifices were now judged by eyes they didn't ask to see again. We didn't blame them. Hell, in their shoes, we'd have done worse. The galaxy kept spinning. The Accord rebranded itself into the Celestial Council. Complete with new logos, softer words, and carefully edited history files. The species who'd built slave fleets now passed resolutions about cooperative ethics. They sent representatives to Earth. None were allowed to land. We answered every offer of diplomacy with a simple response. Never again. They didn't like that. But they didn't push either, because they remembered. And so did we. The Reaper changed us, not just in how we fought, but in what we are. Earth was no longer a planet. It was a symbol, and symbols don't negotiate. They endure, they warn, they hang in the air like thunder before a storm. But inside, we were breaking. Soldiers couldn't adjust. Men who spent years killing couldn't just stop. Suicide rates surged, not from weakness, but from silence, the kind that creeps in when your hands forget what they're supposed to hold if it's not a weapon. I watched my best friend put a bullet through his temple in the ruins of New Berlin. No warning, no last words, just a whisper. I don't know who I am now. That was the real wound. Not the hybrid fleets, not the Avalari. Us. We didn't just lose people in the war, we lost the ability to be people. So I left Earth, took a scout ship, no crew, just an AI and a long-range jump drive. I wasn't running, not exactly. I just wanted to see if there was a piece of the galaxy that hadn't turned to rust and bones. That's how I found Station 9, an old, rusted mining rig, floating near a dead star. No signal, no heat signature, but life inside? Not many, just a few. Humans. Children. Playing. Laughing. I thought I was hallucinating. Losing it. But then one of them ran up to me. He couldn't have been older than 6. He looked at me, this scarred, broken killer in cracked armor, and he smiled. "Are you from Earth?" he asked. I nodded. He held up a crude drawing made with crushed berries and ash. It was a red X. They said Earth saved everyone. But they also said Earth died. Did it? I didn't know what to say, because Earth didn't die. But it wasn't alive, either. It had become something else. A memory wrapped in steel and blood and silence. But watching that kid smile, hearing laughter echo in a place that had once been dark, I realized something. Maybe Earth didn't need to go back to being a planet. Maybe it could be something new, a promise. So I came back. I told them about Station 9, and the council didn't bomb it, didn't try to co-opt it, didn't even answer, because they didn't want to poke the sleeping giant again. But Earth? Earth started listening, not to politics, to voices, scattered human colonies, hidden survivors, orphaned fleets, people who had built something small and fragile and hopeful. We didn't march in with guns. We sent supplies, we sent books, we sent teachers, and over time, those places started calling themselves by a new name, the Ashborn, descendants of Earth, not ruled, not owned, just carriers of the story. And slowly, the fear began to fade. Not entirely, just enough. The Reaper still hums beneath the ice. Some say it's alive, some say it listens. I don't care. I just know we're never using it again, because we already did. And it didn't make us safe. It just made us feared. The next war, if it comes, won't be fought with screams. It'll be fought with choices, with who we help, who we protect, who we forgive, or don't. I still wear my old armor. It's heavy, but so is memory. And I think it's important that the new generation sees us, scars and all, not as heroes, but as a warning. Because this galaxy doesn't need more gods. It doesn't need new empires. It needs people who remember what happens when monsters are allowed to speak with velvet tongues and burn with clean hands. We were dirt-born. They laughed at us, mocked us, tried to cage us. And when that failed, they tried to be us. But they never understood one thing. Earth doesn't fight because it loves war. Earth fights because it remembers. And it remembers everything.